I'm a 38-year-old man who got divorced a year ago from my ex-wife, who's 37. We have 2 kids, aged 10 and 7. I get to see the kids half of the month due to our custody arrangement, but I still have to pay child support to my ex-wife because I earn more than she does. Our divorce wasn't friendly. We had a lot of fights towards the end of our marriage, and she changed a lot as a person. During our last argument, she yelled that she regretted marrying me, so I decided to end things and file for divorce. She never tried to reconcile, and it's been a year since. 6 months after our divorce, she started dating someone else, which I found out from a mutual friend. It hurt to see her move on so quickly, but I didn't say anything about it to her. Since then, we've only talked about our kids, and that's it. Although I was hurt by her quick rebound, I always thought she was a good mom, so I didn't want to mess up our family dynamic. Recently, though, she did something that made me question her character. I was away on a business trip for a few days, and I asked her to watch the kids for an extra 3 days until I got back. She agreed, and I even have messages confirming this. However, on the second day of my trip, my son called me upset because his mom had dropped them off at my house. But I wasn't there to let them in. They were left waiting outside in the cold because I wasn't home, and my neighbors were also away. On that day, I had just moved into a new house in a still developing area where most homes were empty. The only occupied house nearby belonged to an older couple who weren't home. I was already anxious when my son called to say they were waiting outside my house, and the neighbors were away. I asked my son to wait as I called my ex-wife, hoping for a quick apology and for her to pick them up. Instead, she callously told me it was my problem because it was technically my turn to have them. Shocked, I pleaded with her to reconsider for the sake of the kids, but she hung up. I texted her, but she replied that she was running late for a date with her boyfriend and wanted to celebrate their 8-month anniversary. By then, my kids had been waiting in the cold for over 35 minutes. With no other choice, I called Child Protective Services, CPS, and explained. They arrived quickly and took the responsibility of driving my kids to my parents' house, which was out of town. My kids were too young to navigate there on their own. My in-laws had passed away before our marriage, and my other relatives in the city couldn't care for them at the moment. My parents' place was the safest option. I'd also reported my ex-wife for neglect and endangerment because my kids were found sitting on my doorstep, using a blanket to stay warm. By the time the authorities arrived, I felt awful when I heard about the state my kids were in, but I was relieved once they were safe at my parents' house. My ex-wife was arrested for negligence soon after I reported the incident, and I went to bed that night feeling validated, knowing my kids were okay and action was being taken. I immediately contacted my lawyer to pursue full custody upon my return, which would mean an end to child support payments. I was eager to make sure my ex-wife faced consequences. We didn't talk for a couple of days, during which I learned she was charged with a misdemeanor. When I got back from my trip, I saw my kids first and we talked about what happened. I apologized for not being there and assured them it wouldn't happen again. As I was going to file for full custody, my oldest seemed strangely relieved by this, which made me question my assumption that my ex-wife was a good mom. She wasn't perfect, but she seemed to care for the kids during our marriage and after the divorce. The kids hadn't raised any concerns about life with their mom until now. After learning that my son seemed happy about the prospect of not living with his mom anymore, I asked him why. He hesitated at first but eventually opened up and revealed that they had been having a tough time at their mom's place. She was extremely strict, suddenly banning them from having any candy or junk food during the time they spent with her each month. They were stuck eating bland, repetitive meals like tasteless porridge and oats for lunch and dinner, with only slightly more variety on weekends like toast with dip. My kids called this sick food, not because it was cool, but because it was what I would give them when they were actually sick and needed something gentle on their stomachs. Their mom claimed this was for their health, but I couldn't understand how a diet lacking in meat and vegetables for half a month was supposed to be healthy. I also couldn't see the harm in letting them have treats occasionally, as long as it wasn't excessive. In fact, I believed it could help them develop a healthier relationship with food in the long run. They also shared that they weren't allowed to do much at their mom's place. No friends over, no sleepovers, and they could only go to school and come straight back. They weren't allowed to buy anything they wanted when she took them shopping, not even toys, books, or clothes. It seemed like she only purchased what she needed. leaving out any extras for them. It's heartbreaking to learn that my kids endured such treatment at their mother's house, staying quiet to avoid her yelling at them. Worst of all, she forbade them from talking to me about it. I had no idea what was happening until they finally opened up. I decided to confront my ex-wife about it. When I called her, she immediately started yelling at me for reporting her to the cops. Ignoring that, I asked her about everything the kids had complained about. Her explanations didn't make sense to me because I paid her enough in child support to cover their needs. Despite this, my kids felt they never had enough to eat, wear, or play with. She claimed she was between jobs and couldn't afford everything for the kids, but that didn't add up because I was also paying her alimony to maintain her standard of living. I argued with her, but she snapped back, saying it was none of my business how she used the money. This angered me because the money I sent her was for our kids, not for her personal use. I suspected she was lying, so my lawyer and I decided to pursue full custody and also sue her for child abuse and neglect, given the circumstances. She already had a criminal case due to leaving the kids out in the cold. While I was away on my trip, it became clear that I needed to take legal action against my ex-wife. It's been about a week and a half since then, and a few days ago she was served with the lawsuit papers. On the day she was served, she called me, putting on a show of fake tears. She hadn't reached out to me before this, and it seemed she was only doing so now because she realized she might lose custody of our kids. I suspected her tears weren't genuine, that she was more concerned about losing the child support that came with custody than actually caring for our children. During our call, I told her plainly that she had brought this situation upon herself and that I could no longer trust her with the kids. She tried to claim she was just messing with me and that she planned to regain custody anyway. I didn't buy it. When she confessed that she couldn't survive without the child support due to being between jobs, it confirmed my suspicions. It seemed she wanted custody primarily for financial reasons, not out of genuine love for our children. I was disgusted by this revelation and was ready to end the call when I overheard her friend, who is an attorney, yelling at her to focus on discussing a lawsuit with me instead of dwelling on the money. My ex-wife then changed tack and urged me to drop the lawsuit, calling it petty and claiming she already had enough on her plate with another ongoing legal issue. However, her previous actions had shown me a side of her that deeply concerned me, and I remained resolute in pursuing custody and holding her accountable for her neglectful behavior towards our children. While I was away and engaged in a custody battle with my ex-wife, I also decided to pursue a child protection lawsuit against her. She complained that none of this was fair and accused me of intentionally trying to hurt her because she had moved on with her life while I hadn't. I found her statement so delusional that I couldn't help but laugh before disconnecting the call. There was no point in arguing with her. After that, I focused on my work and taking care of my kids. I knew my kids wouldn't go back to living with their mother under any circumstances, and I was determined to stop the child support payments as well. I started looking for babysitters for when I was at work. Luckily, my mom was staying with me temporarily to help take care of the kids while I was away. Yesterday, my mom called me at work, urging me to come home quickly because my ex-wife was at the door and refusing to leave without speaking to me. Since I couldn't leave in the middle of a workday, I asked my mom to put her on the phone with me. I warned her that if she continued her disruptive behavior, I would have no choice but to file a restraining order against her. Things escalated further when my ex-wife failed to address my warning and instead complained that I was intentionally making her life difficult. She pleaded for compassion and asked me to drop the lawsuit, citing the mental strain of facing multiple legal challenges simultaneously, the impending custody case and the child protection lawsuit. I had already informed my colleagues and boss about the upcoming court proceedings, and they were supportive as long as my work wasn't affected too much. However, my ex-wife argued that she couldn't afford the time and expenses of legal representation and court appearances because she was currently between jobs. I responded by echoing her own words back at her. This was her problem now, not mine. Admittedly, my response was driven partly by spite due to how she had treated me and our children since our divorce. Despite receiving monthly alimony and child support payments from me, she had deprived our children of a stable home environment and instilled fear in them, preventing them from sharing their experiences with me. I believe my actions were fair given her selfishness, dishonesty, and failure as a mother. I didn't think being straightforward with her was unreasonable, considering the circumstances. However, she broke down on the call, accusing me of being horrible to her. She felt it was unjust that she was not only likely to lose custody of the children, but also facing legal action from me. Despite feeling some guilt about the situation, I maintained that the course of action was necessary. I was pursuing legal action against her for neglecting our children, even though she was already facing charges and dealing with a custody case. Update 1. Hi everyone, it's been 2 days since I last shared here, and I've realized I shouldn't feel guilty thanks to your advice and my parents' support. I'm convinced now that the money I've been sending my ex-wife for the kids isn't being used for them at all. She's spending it on herself. We're not connected on social media, and I haven't been in touch with our mutual friends regularly due to my work. But after talking here and with my parents, I reached out to a couple of friends to gather more information about her financial situation. My kids mentioned to me after my last post that their mom is home most days, but on weekends, she's out for hours and leaves them with neighbors. Sometimes she has relatives babysit overnight and comes back only in the morning. I realized my kids were being silent about this, likely because she instructed them not to talk to me about it. I knew something was off and decided to set aside my morals temporarily to investigate further. I've avoided this because I thought she deserved privacy after our divorce. But I see now it was a mistake. If I hadn't unfollowed her on social media, I might have known more about her life. Through a friend's account, I discovered her social media is full of partying, clubbing, beach trips, and romantic getaways at luxury hotels. It's quite the influencer lifestyle, which shocked me because she portrayed herself as financially struggling. My friends explained they didn't mention this before because they felt it wasn't their place to comment. I distanced myself from old friends after the divorce, trying to avoid reminders of her. But that didn't help. Now that I know the truth, I feel no guilt. She deceived me and mistreated our kids to save money instead of using it for them. She deserves the consequences of her actions. I won't let myself feel sorry for her anymore after what I've discovered. Update 2. Right now, my ex-wife and I are in the midst of a lawsuit, with our second hearing coming up in 2 days. Surprisingly, she quickly gave up on the custody battle and expressed willingness to terminate her parental rights because she couldn't afford her lawyer for all 3 cases. Now the kids are fully under my custody, and I finally feel a sense of relief knowing what's going to happen. Regarding the lawsuit, things are leaning in my favor. However, today her boyfriend made a huge mistake by contacting me. He thought sharing their sob story would make me sympathetic, but it only angered me more. It seemed my ex-wife had prioritized her new relationship of barely a year over her own children, which was unacceptable to me. Fortunately, I recorded the phone call because I initially thought he might threaten me. Instead, he asked me to stop the proceedings, claiming my ex-wife had been working hard since quitting her job after the divorce. She's a freelancer, so money is tight, and she's supporting herself, her kids, and him. When I questioned him about her frequent partying and expensive trips, he had no real answer. He insisted it was all for show and that she was struggling financially. He also mentioned she was paying for his master's degree tuition from her savings. When I heard this, I ended the call and blocked him. It finally clicked where all the money was going and why my children were being deprived despite my regular child support payments. She'll have to face the consequences in court, and I'm determined to ensure she does. Update 3. It's been a while. I want to thank you all for your concern and for checking in on me. I'm doing a lot better now, and so are the kids. They seem really happy here with me and hardly mention their mother these days. As expected, she lost the case, and now she owes me a lot of money. This means she can't continue living it up with her boyfriend and friends like she was doing. It was kind of strange seeing a woman in her late 30s with 2 kids blowing all her money at clubs and on vacations. I don't know what she was thinking. Anyway, I've moved on and have nothing to do with her anymore. Once again, thank you all for your love and support.